Yo,
Hey man,
how you doing, bud?
I'm good.
Good morning, sunshine. I know it's earlier time right now.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just muting you on Twitch. There we go. All right, speak again.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I got you, man.
Awesome,
How's
man.
it
Well,
going?
doing good, man. Hey, thank you so much. We were talking yesterday, and you were telling me how like it's gonna be 6 a.m. for you when you join me. Thank you so much, man. I know it's a little early. I'm hoping you get enough coffee in you to be able to chit chat with me for an hour.
I'm literally drinking it right now,
Good.
dude.
You got your jewel in hand.
Yeah, right
All
here.
right, you're ready. Cool. Well, before we get it started, man, for some reason I don't know who would know you as a hacker in bug bounties, but for people that don't know you, who are you? How long have you been hacking? And what's your background like?
So my name's nnwakelam. I've been hacking shit probably about a decade now. I
Yeah.
started doing bug bounties late 2013 because HackerOne started a platform, and I saw that Yahoo was on there. I hadn't actually thought about ever even working in computer security before that, which I, in hindsight, find really funny. Um, I then went and found my first couple bugs on Yahoo, which were honestly garbage looking back at it. But back then, Yahoo was just so criminally insecure
All
that you
right.
could just find security issues everywhere. Like I shelled two Yahoo servers within my first 8 hours of looking, and then
Mm.
I just kept finding bugs after that. I had a job at a call center. I cut that off the first time I got paid out a decent bounty, and then
Nice.
I was at university and I stopped actually going to classes because I was making money and it was working for me.
Uh,
And then yeah, the proof's in the pudding. Here we are 6 or 7 years later.
did you ever think you were gonna become a millionaire from doing bug bounties?
I mean, I could have had no idea that this was going to end up being what it was, right? Like I had an idea that it was probably going to be profitable, especially once I saw it really take off and all the companies jump on board.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you had to ask me at 18 that I'd make, $1 million on HackerOne, I yeah, no way.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy just like outside of just the money aspect of it, man. Like I'm not at the level of money that you guys are making, but I never thought this hacking thing would become, a hobby would become a main source of income, man. Like become a hobby becomes an income and you're doing something that you love. I never saw it coming at all, and I can only imagine what it feels like for you and people like you that are making a good chunk of money from bug bounties, especially with just one
I,
program. It's
I
insane.
never I never thought it would become like a part of the industry. I
Yeah.
like looking at it now, it's obvious that bug bounty programs are going to end up having, where obviously they're not going to ever replace traditional security testing,
Right.
but I definitely think that within 2 or 3 years, I really would be surprised if most of the Fortune 500 isn't engaging in bug bounty programs, and if we're not seeing it in the wider community, because there's no reason not to have one at this point.
Yeah, I mean, shit. I mean, so many companies are doing them now, and it's crazy to see how many. It's crazy to see how many programs on HackerOne. Like you and I are one of the select people that were around when Yahoo was the only customer on HackerOne, right? And
Yeah,
looking at it now, there's like PayPal and X, Y, and Z companies who have made over. They've paid over $1 million to hackers, and Verizon Media being one of the select companies that's made, that's paid $1 million just overnight at a live hacking event, for example. It's a crazy change.
yeah, it's definitely an indicator of where the industry is moving. I mean, it used to be that you had to have some ridiculous amount of certificates to even test and an agreement to test someone's systems. And unfortunately, two things came out of that. Firstly, not everyone in the industry with certifications actually knows what the fuck they're talking about, for
Absolutely.
starters. And and secondly, if you look at like the many eyes theory, there's always going to be bugs in code. So it makes sense that you allow like rank amateurs to test your stuff, because realistically, bug bounty hunters are an unpaid workforce. Unless you find a security issue, there's no real money out of pocket for these organizations.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win on both sides. Like we get to make some money finding bugs, and they get to only pay for actual issues. So yeah, everybody wins.
Speaking of cert, you have your CEH, right?
I don't. I have my OSCP, which I got ages ago now. I got my OSCP when I was 17 or 18 because mainly for anyone listening, actually, as far as industry certifications go and things that will actually separate you from if you're trying to get a job, that is,
Yeah.
and things that will actually separate you in industry, the OSCP is actually a respected standard, or it's had some issues more recently
I mean, it's a little bit
because they're also,
outdated, right? But they're
yeah,
fixing it.
there was also some scandals which didn't really go public, that in countries like India, you were able to pay someone else to actually take the OSCP for you,
Mm.
and that obviously polluted it a little bit. But it's a lot of companies that are hiring use it as a good measuring stick to see whether someone's worth calling in for an interview. And yeah, I would recommend for anyone here that actually is serious about computer security, go through do pen test a lab, do hack in the box, knock out some CTFs, do some bug bounties, and then once you're actually at a reasonable level, in the sense that you understand, on some level how a web app works and how to talk to a web app, you should go and do your OSCP, make the time for it, because you'll definitely reap the benefits from that.
Yeah, so let's talk about the OSCP in general. Like outside of computer security, like it tells you the basics, it gives you the attacker mindset, right? How did it help you with bug bounties alone? Because I remember when you were just starting, when we both were starting, you were very into OSCP, but you had a huge. At some point, you went from Naffy to like super Naffy, and you were just popping shit left and right. Not that you weren't doing it, but I saw a huge change in your approach. Was OSCP a big part of that, or was it just a good way to learn the basics of computer security?
So I always had pretty strong web skills. Like, I've obviously picked up a whole heap of stuff over the last 5 or 6 years,
Mm-hmm.
which is more like things that you expect that you should have known, that you just didn't realize, or no one ever showed you. I picked up lots of little bits like that. But as far as the OSCP was concerned, it more just gave me the opportunity to actually like get a job in industry, which was helpful. I wouldn't say
Yeah.
that I necessarily learned a great deal from working in industry, but it was definitely a cool experience, and it was something that I enjoyed. As far as owning shit left and right, I started looking, especially for Verizon Media, or Yahoo as it was back then.
Yeah.
They had a massive attack surface, so I figured that I was going to get further looking at the stuff that no one else was looking at, because back then Yahoo had ranges and ranges and ranges of just absolute garbage which was on the external internet, and I didn't have a better way to do it because I didn't know how to. So
Right.
I was running dir search on every Yahoo host one by one, and then keeping a list of it. So I literally used to sit there with like 8 terminals up, typing the dir search, like Python 3 dir search -u, and all the different flags. Yeah, 8 hours a day most days, because I'd run it for a couple of hours, and then eventually I'd find some Perl administrative panel, or some shitty PHP app, or some dev box. Like, some of the stuff that I saw on Yahoo, like some examples I can give you are I found an app called KO Tools, which was literally if you hit index.pl of the main web app, it would drop you into this Perl application, which did nothing but collect all the cookies from all the other Yahoo properties and put them in this app that you could just search by cookie,
Yeah.
and you could pull out any cookie for a live Yahoo user.
Wow.
And it was just lots of stuff like that. Like, there was obviously a little bit more magic that went into some of the bugs, but a lot of them were just really, really simple. Just finding unreferenced content on hosts, and then actually exploiting that content. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have any inspiration or mentors, people that you were looking up to when you first started in bug bounties?
Well, I would say that I had mentors when I first started hacking, man. Like I look at
Yeah.
a lot of these people that are coming up now, and people always ask me like, how do I get into hacking? And the reality is, for me, I had one really good friend who's been on here as well, Shabam Shah. Shabam and me have known each other for a very long time. We met when we were teenagers,
Yeah.
and we kind of like grew together and like fed off of each other to get better and better at hacking, because we just did it competitively, but it was friendly competition. And then outside of that, lots of industry mentors and just people that I could ask questions, because the only way that you ever really learn something is you either figure it out or someone shows you it, right? Like that's literally what knowledge is. And some knowledge you need to go and unfortunately just do for yourself, or
Right.
fortunately, depending on how you look at it. But like for a whole lot of it, if you can ask someone the question and you can benefit from like the learning process they've taken,
Hmm.
that to me is infinitely valuable. So I would say to anyone on here to really just look at like who's in your corner and who you can communicate with and talk to about this stuff, because it's one thing to undertake this journey by yourself, but you can learn a lot more by having friendly, healthy competition with your peers, I guess.
Yeah, I
That
mean,
makes
it does make sense. I use Zayed as the same example for me. Like, him and I didn't really, it wasn't like, I'm going to teach you what I do, you teach me what you do. It was just mostly like, hey, let's look at this site, Airbnb, for example. And he would find bugs and be like, yo, I just found this, iDoor. And then I'm like, oh shit, I just found something similar by doing this. And just showing that back and forth, it really helped us because I got to see how he looks at an application and I would just go, holy shit, like, it checks out, right? Like it works. I could just follow how he did it and then add that to my tool. But then he would also sometimes go, I never thought about it that way. Like, why does that work? I'm like, I don't fucking know, but it worked because I just tested out and you just poke at things together and kind of get to see other people's perspective is very, very helpful.
I've had the same thing with Zayot in particular, where he's done a couple of things with web applications that like he's shown to me, and the way that he says it, it's kind of like, oh, this is so obvious, like everyone does this, and I'm like,
Right, but
really,
no.
really? I'm like, really, everyone does that? No, dude, it's just you. But
Yeah.
like, but yeah, exactly that. If you're wanting to learn past a certain point, you've got to be looking at who's around you, and to be honest, like what's the mark of all successful people, like philosophically, it depends how you measure success, but in this context, like all successful people are normally surrounded by other successful people. It's
Yeah.
like if you want to be somewhere in life, generally surrounding yourself with people that already have the qualities that you're looking to have is a good way to get where you want to get to.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's just go back to it again. So when you first started, man, like there was some stuff that you were really, really good at, I assume, and there was some stuff that you wanted to learn. Um, Again, hypothetically, let's say
So
let's say SSRF was a new thing for you. How were you learning these things? Like, if there was something like SSRF or some concept that you saw, that you wanted to learn, because like the thing that I'm trying to get at is 6, 7 years ago when you and I were just doing bug bounties on Yahoo and Google and Facebook were the only companies. There wasn't really a pen tester lab that had so much content. There wasn't a Hacker 101. There wasn't a Try Hack Me. There wasn't there wasn't a lot of blog posts for bug bounties and shit like that. So you really had to learn things on your own. How did you do that? How did you say, I like this technique, I like this approach, I like this thing, and even today, how do you learn those?
so as far as technique and picking up new skills, I think there's a massive disconnect with a lot of people in insofar that, how do I say this? You should be able to self-teach to a certain point. Like when I was first getting into a lot of this, like bug bounties, that is not security, I already had a pretty strong web background. So if I was seeing new techniques, it wasn't that hard for me to be like, okay, that's how this is, that's the intended result from that. This is the input that I meant to give that. So where is a URL going to be consumed where I'm going to see that outcome?
Yeah.
And I wasn't testing it logically. Like, looking back at it, there's heaps of stuff that I very likely missed. But being able to just like actually follow something through being able to actually follow something through like logically is kind of the best way to get to where you want to get to. I think as far as testing goes, you're gonna know if you've got strong web skills or not. And as much as I'm not a big fan of certs, I would go back to OSCP for that. Like, you should be going through and finishing pen tester lab, do your OSCP, actually start building, so you're able start putting the building blocks in place to give yourself the understanding you need. Because like unless you're actually confident with what you're doing, going and just testing an application, as much as it might be fun and you're going to learn things, a lot of these are battle hardened targets.
Yeah.
So like you're dealing with, I'm in the same boat, right? I'm dealing with the fact that everyone has run through, or when I say everyone, most of the people in the bug bounty community have run through a lot of these applications. So in order to keep finding stuff, you're either getting lucky, and it is luck,
Yeah.
or you're actually going above and beyond what other testers have done. And if you want to go above and beyond what other testers have done, you need those good, solid fundamentals.
Yeah, I mean, what you say is literally like, as you're saying this, I'm literally picturing this. Like, mayonnaise is a great example of this, right? Dudes came into the bug bounty world 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago. And just Verizon Media has been around for a very long time. To be real, like, Verizon Media's program has been looked at for the past 5-6 years, and dude's still finding stuff because he's literally doing what you said. He's going above and beyond with his hacking, and he's becoming very unique for him. Like, what he's doing is unique to him, and he's going above and beyond to make it happen.
So for mayonnaise, and this is a really perfect example of what I'm talking about, there's stuff that mayonnaise has done that when he's shown me it, I've been like, oh, no shit. Because like a lot of those applications are stuff that I've actually seen before. Mm-hmm. It was just that I wasn't approaching those applications the same way he was. So he was able to find stuff that I missed.
Yeah. He's blew my mind. Like, the fact that, like, I asked him, like, I was expecting some like crazy shit for his, content discovery stuff or asset discovery stuff, and he's like, I just use AMAS or AMAS, I should say. Yeah. That's all he uses, and he's like, just the way he uses it. And I just talked to Jeff Foley, the author of AMAS, and he said Mayo is probably one of the only people that uses AMAS the way I would use it.
It's funny, right? Everyone wants to, everyone sees the bugs that we find, and they assume that there's some secret sauce and some magic here.
You push a button and it spits out bugs for you, right?
I've been telling people for years, like, most of what I do is just I run Nmap religiously.
Yeah.
I look at where I can actually collate and find subdomains. I do subdomain brute forcing, active reconnaissance, all that fun shit. But like, I'm not doing anything magic here. Like, you can find tweets, you can find references to all this shit. It's just more people don't want to put the time in.
Yeah.
If I'm sitting here, and let me just think about it. So what day is it? It's Monday. So last week, I probably put in, I'd say 6 to 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
Every day that week. Yeah, man. And that's exactly it. Like, if you want those outcomes, you've got to be willing to put the time in.
You got to build a habit, right? Of getting into it every day and wanting to do that. Having the habit of doing it every day without feeling like it can be forced is what it is. You have to want to do it.
Dude, I catch myself like literally like muttering to myself like, fuck, I hate computers. Like, I don't know, dude. Like some days I really don't want to do it, but I know that if I put the time in, because I've seen so much of Yahoo's network now, that I can identify new hosts or hosts I haven't seen before relatively quickly. And it's the kind of process, right? I throw on some cartoons. Been watching Adventure Time recently, and I'll literally just watch cartoons and just go through and brute force until I eventually find something of interest. And then when I find something of interest, I'll actually put some serious brain cycles into it and think about it. But it's not some magic process. And I think the reason that most people think that it's daunting is because the only way to ever get to the top of the mountain is to start climbing. And I don't think a lot of people, if they were honest with themselves, genuinely put as much time into this as they could or should.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's a lot of, at least, I mean, you have to first of all put in the time. Anything you do in life, you have to put in the time and effort if you really want it to work out. And hacking is the same thing. Whether you like it or not, you have to put in the. It all comes with experience, right? Like if you didn't have the experience from your last 5 years, maybe not the last 5 years, like when when 3 years ago, if you didn't have the experience that you have put in, all the time that you have put in for 3 years, you wouldn't be able to find bugs as easy as you were. You had the
For
experience
sure.
when you look and you go, oh, I've seen this behavior in Yahoo before. I'm going to do this. I've seen this I've seen similar situation on X program that I'm going to try on this one. Maybe it would work. It comes with experience and over time, not with reading books, not with just, saying I want to hack, not with just doing recon, not with just doing brute forcing. It comes with experience and the time that you put in.
No one can teach you. I completely agree. No one can teach you the practical skills besides you. Like all the stuff you're doing with live recon streams, all the various like certs in the world, Pentester Lab, all that shit. It's great, and it'll give you a base from which to work from. But at a certain point, part of the reason that I'm able to breach networks and part of the reason that I hack Verizon Media successfully is that I've just put the time in, and I know what it looks like now. And to be honest, I also kind of feel sometimes like it's a waste of my time because like I dedicate so much time to this, but at the same time, it's you if you do something successfully that you love, eventually it's going to become something different. And like at this point it's work. It's not a hobby anymore.
Right. But I'm assuming you'd rather do this kind of work than have a 9 to 5 job, though, right?
Dude, like commuting into the city would fucking kill me, man. Like it's not the jobs that I have a problem with. It's the lead time on having to, iron and press a suit, shine my shoes, get up in the morning and commute. Like that's the part that would fucking kill me.
Yeah. You said something about you put in 6 to 8 hours. At least you did last week, 6 to 8 hours. Do you have a routine, or is it just whenever you feel like it that you go and start hacking?
Yeah, so I do have a bit of a routine. And I can't even detail this because like it doesn't really affect me at all. So
Give me a TLDR. You wake up. What do you do?
yeah. All right, yeah, and I'll write out some of the root domains. So okay, I wake up, I make some coffee. Verizon Media has like 6 or 7 hosts of root domains of interest. I then go through and see what domains I've found overnight, what's being discovered. I'll then go and run Nmap over that for the ports 80, 443, 4443, and 4080. Based on that Nmap output, I'll either find something to hack for the day, or I'll then go to CertSH or Census or Shodan, normally all three.
Yeah.
And I'll see what that's found overnight as well. Because like what you're mainly interested in there is because Verizon Media utilize AWS a bundle, you can often find hosts that have just been stood up for various testing or other bullshit or dev QA, like pre-prod. And I then go through and I brute force those hosts, attempt to find content on them. Some of the time I'll find content on them and I'll then go and hack something there for the afternoon. And even while I'm doing all of that, like one big thing that I would stress for everyone here is you can't be single-minded. Yeah. Like if I'm hacking, like say some Taiwanese Yahoo application, I'm still gonna have like other scans running. I'm still gonna have other brute forces running. Mm-hmm. So I'm getting a multiple on my time. Yeah. Whereas like if I'm finishing the process for testing one host, I'm probably starting that process for 5 or 6 others. That way you're able to actually like for 6 or 8 hours, instead of going down a rabbit hole and only testing one dumbass feature that you don't end up finding a bug in, you can test that feature, but also be running the brute forces simultaneously to find other things. So your time wasn't actually worthless, so to speak.
Do you pay for Showdown or Census?
Yeah, I pay for both of them. No, I don't pay for Census. Fuck Census, man. I can't believe like any business. Bro. Any business that gives me the old bait and switch, like, we're going to be free. And then one day they're like, now you just have to pay $1,000 to use our product correctly. Like, fuck you, dude. I pay for Shodan because it was like $8, which I thought was a good ROI. But even, I haven't done it yet, but I know a bundle of other people have. you can like there's a heap of tools out there for you to effectively map and scan all of the AWS IPv4 space
Right.
very, very quickly, and then you can just match that back to SSL certificates, and it's very easy to figure out what belongs to an organization with relative ease. Like that's something that I should actually be doing, which I've just never gotten around to setting up. But that will give you live output. But the thing is, Census and Shodan scan so regularly that I
Yeah.
just don't feel the need to actually go and set that up for myself, though I probably should.
Yeah. The reason why I asked about those is just I wanted to point out that you're using the pretty much the same tools as everybody else. You just are using them efficiently to the way that customly works for you and your workflow, right? You're not
For sure.
paying. You don't have an advantage of paying $1,000 a month to Census to get the data. You're just using the fucking free version. If you hit your API limit, make another account, right? It's not that hard.
Dude. I've got like 5 Census accounts that I work through because like when one hits the limit, I just sign out and log into another
Yeah,
account.
absolutely, man.
Yeah, dude. It's but it's a good point you make. When it comes down to it, I think a lot of people have this idea like there's some secret bag of tricks that
Yeah.
we're all lauding, and that they like they just put enough time in, they'll get access to the bag of tricks. And the reality is like it's time spent. If you invest the time, you're going to get the outcome, but most people aren't willing to invest the time.
Yeah. Let's talk about something that it's I don't want to say controversial, but it's it proves a point. Do you do any regular coding or development?
Do I do any what?
Do you do any coding? Do you do Python, Go, Ruby, anything
So
like that?
so
Or
I can read code in the sense that, so recently I had this Java piece of shit that I was testing on one part of Verizon Media. It so happens, shocker. Yeah, I was going through all this garbage Java code, and like I can effectively read code when required. Like if I'm sitting on a box and I'm trying to figure out how to escalate or some shit, like I can read like Bash, PHP, Perl,
yeah,
Python, whatever, Ruby, whatever. Like because it's all at a certain point. You don't need to know how to code to be able to look through and be like, what inputs does this take? Like what is its
yeah,
purpose?
right.
Like, you can figure that shit out like on the fly. But as far as writing code, I write a lot of ghetto Bash. In the
Guilty.
sense that in the sense that I just like,
Just get it done, right? Just write something that just get shit done and move on to the next task.
yeah, dude. Like I utilize curl a whole lot.
Yep.
Like that's the thing, right? Like everyone makes out that there's some like secret sauce here, and you've got to have some amazing skill set. I just utilize a bundle of like basic commands, and I normally get where I want to get to from there. Obviously, I've got a couple of scripts that do like DNS resolutions, but that's just basic automation, right? Like I just throw it in a screen, let it run, and then come back to the output.
Yeah, I think you have I think something I picked up off that you doing regularly on Twitter is I think you have a hobby of just discovering new tools. You just randomly, I think you sit down and just fucking go look at the tools that have certain keywords and mess around with them until you find the one that you like. Is that accurate?
I haven't actually changed anything in my tool set for a long time, dude. Like I read about what else is out there, but like all like the aquatones and all the stuff that's been dropped over the last couple of years, I haven't used any of it, honestly. Like even what's that tool that takes screenshots?
There's Aquatone, there is Eyewitness, there is Web Screenshot Pi.
It's Aquatone I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
So like as a good example for something like that, right? And this is just how I think. Like if I'm using a tool, I'm relying on that tool to give me like correct and proper output. And a lot of the time, unfortunately, for applications that are going to be of interest, you're not always going to get like what you're expecting in the output. And a good example of that was so there was an application that was it was actually just an IP address that was on one of AOL's ranges, and if you actually hit that on port 80, it would give you a location redirect to like autos-qa.cms.aol.com / like admin or some bullshit like that.
Okay.
But the CNAME record didn't exist. And this was there for ages. Like I'd seen it several times and I've just been like, what the fuck? Like, why is this only open on port 80? And then I was sitting in Amsterdam and I was like, wait a second, if that CNAME record's dead, but it's trying to redirect to that, maybe that IP address was actually what it's trying to redirect to. Like, you know, maybe that CNAME was pointing to the IP that I can hit.
Right.
So I tried autos-qa.cms.aol.com, and what I ended up getting dumped out into, like this is still one of the coolest fucking apps I've seen just because it was so criminally insecure, was it dumped me out into like 100 meg worth of errors to start with.
Oh, shit.
Because it loaded every single error that had been generated when code tried to run for like a decade. And then so once all those errors loaded, I'm sitting in this panel, and what it was it was the admin panel that was actually controlling autos.aol.com as it existed in like 2005 or something.
Jesus Christ.
So like if you went through, the whole app was actually like what it was talking to was dead, but the app still worked. So
Right.
like I've got this admin panel, and I literally looked at it for about 2 minutes and I shelled it because you could edit its own Java files, like JSP files that it was using to actually run various commands.
Right.
So you could just edit an existing file and put cmd.jsp in, and you had a shell.
Jesus.
And that was like all up, and that was $70,000 worth of bugs. But like that's an example of where, you know, none of those tools would have caught that, because it was just such an edge case where like you had to see that location redirect,
Right.
understand what that location redirect was doing, and then actually know how to apply it. And that's like, those are all very basic skills. Like what I just described then, like, you know, taking a CNAME and then you putting it in the host header. If you're doing any kind of testing by like Census or Shodan or any bullshit like that, or even just scanning yourself,
Right.
you're going to have IP addresses with SSL certificates that reference what host they are, right?
Right.
That's how web servers work. But a lot of the time, unless you're actually specifying the correct host in the host header, you're not going to be getting anywhere, because you're like, what you're actually doing is you're just hitting the IP. You're not actually telling the IP address to route you to a vhost and a web application. So like that's an example of where, you know, just like a basic tech understanding is required to actually like identify your attack surface.
Yeah, I think like you said you use curl a lot, and I think that's a really good example of showing like just curling a host in particular could give you that information, right? Or even the endpoint if it redirects you. It's a curl I, right? Just a curl -I gives you that information alone. And if you automate that enough to do it for every subdomain you find or every whatever if you find, that's something that a tool wouldn't find for you, right? Maybe some tools that are custom made do it, but not not something that a regular tool would find for you.
You should be like, anything that you're doing in regards to web security, you should be assuming that all your tools are going to fail at some point, and you should actually be looking at how they work. Because unless you have a good idea of what your tool's actually doing under the hood, the issue that you're always going to run into is that like when it misses something, that's massive, because like there's only a limited amount of bugs on a lot of these attack surfaces, right? So like if you're missing, you know, that one bug that would have ended up being like 30, 40, 50 grand, like for me, every time I miss one of those, like I don't find that many of those a year, right? Like realistically, you know, I find a fair few bugs, but like every one of those that I miss, like, is a significant amount of money. So, so like I want to know and be pretty fucking sure that it's actually doing what I think it's doing, and I can't actually rely on those tools, because
myself.
I know, especially for things like dir search as a good example, that it did miss stuff.
Yeah.
And because it started missing things, I identified it missing things, because I was like, okay, that's working here, but I'm not seeing that output in dir search. I was able to be like, all right, well, I need to move tools. And then I looked at something else that I could use that would actually do what I wanted to do reliably.
So speaking of tools, you have been religiously a big fan of Nmap. You use it regularly, and you've mentioned it so far.
It's so fucking good, dude. Like, I don't understand how more people don't like get around it. It blows me away that everyone wants to build out their latest, hipster fucking hack the planet framework. And it's like, dude, Nmap has been keeping it gangster for fucking like, isn't Nmap like 20 years old, dude?
Yeah,
Like how old is Nmap? Legitimate question. Let me look this shit up. Yeah, 1997, dude. Like it, and it
yeah.
still does the job. That's the thing.
So you also are the reason why a lot of people give me a lot of shit for Ffuf. Thank you for that. Every time there is something that I do on my stream, why don't you try Ffuf? And I tell them to Ffuf off. So I
That's
know
it.
I know you use Ffuf a lot. What other tools do you use? What is in your? Because you say you use a particular set of tools that you've been using forever. Ffuf being one. I know you used to use
So
the IR search a lot. Nmap is another one. What else do
so
you use?
for Ffuf, just as like a fun little backstory, I was in Germany going to shit. Was it CCC? I think I was going to Chaos Computer Club camp. But anyway, I was in Germany, and I met the guy that had made Ffuf, Jahoy, and
Okay.
we were sitting drinking beers at a cafe, just hanging out talking about computer security. And I was like, "Hey, dude, like these are all features that you should put in a Ffuf," and I literally told him like all this shit. I just did a brain dump on him, and then he started actually implementing all those features, and like Ffuf went from being like this like kind of okay tool to this like battle hardened fucking gangster
That
ass
does
thing.
everything almost for
Yeah,
you.
yeah, dude, and like literally all of those commits were pretty much a direct result of me and him talking and just being like, it's like, hey, all right, so this is shit that like all these other tools fail at. If it does this, it's gonna be the best tool that's ever been released for this purpose. And he was just like, all right, sweet, and then literally just went and fucking committed it. I was super impressed.
Yeah.
But anyway, that story aside, he's a cool dude as well, by the way. I got fucking hammered with him at CCC. Really, really cool guy. Um, but yeah, what else do I use? So I use Ffuf. I obviously I run Nmap religiously, and as much as I hate to say it, dude, like that's about it.
Oh,
I have a bundle of reconnaissance tools that just do all the normal stuff like DNS brute forcing in Go, DNS resolutions, and then outside of that, if I need something specific, like recently I started trying to map out Yahoo's IPv6 space, which
yeah.
was horrifying because if you've actually looked at how big IPv6 is, it's kind of like heat death of the universe big. Like trying to practically map IPv6 out is just like go the fuck home. Like don't bother. You've got to identify interesting parts of the IP space and then
Right.
hopefully scan it and find similar stuff. But because of how IPv6 allocates IPs aren't actually a lot of the time allocated the same way they would be on a normal IPv4 network, like IP.
Yeah.
It can actually be allocated somewhat randomly. So like there it isn't always uniform. So there's a lot of issues that go with that. But like for that example, I just went and read a bundle of bullshit that people had released on IPv6 network reconnaissance because there's articles out there, there's
Right.
resources out there, and then I just I looked at what was available, I looked at what would do what I needed to do, and I picked up 2 off the shelf tools that did it for me.
So you earlier you said you do Nmap and you do port 80, 443, and I think it's 40, 80, and 4443 for internal Yahoo ports. Do you just do a vanilla Nmap, or are you also running like NSC scripts on it at the top of it? Like, do you just start with a port scan and then go into your scripts with Nmap, or do you just do it one for all of it? Like, do you do it one time and get it over with, and then move on to the next one?
So I normally run a HTTP title, which is just pulling out
The title of
just
that
pulling out
IP.
yeah, just pulling out title. That's kind of about it. Like I my workflow tends to be like identify hosts, run Nmap with a HTTP title. Based upon anything that actually responds, I'm the kind of person where I tend to hit pretty much every host that I scan. Like if I'm running an Nmap scan, the only stuff that I'm disregarding are the things that I already tested, because like you have to make the assumption at some point that not everything is going to change all the time, because otherwise you just can't effectively ever really scan anything, because you're always just going to be starting again and again and again,
Right.
and only doing the first 10 or 15%. So I make assumptions that that logically, if I'm testing something, the state of that application isn't going to change for several days or several weeks, with the exception of a lot of the stuff on oath.cloud, because that's an active development environment a lot of the time. I assume that oath.cloud is going to have active changes every hour or every half an hour, which is a fair assumption to make, because people are actively developing on it. Whereas for a lot of other applications, they may change, but you've got to assume once you've tested them that they're not going to change for long enough for you to effectively go and test everything else and then start again, if that makes sense.
But for Nmap, the only NSCP we run is the title, because it also helps you kind of understand what's on the application. But
For sure.
so you go from, so you do your, I'm trying to map out at a high level how you do your recon. So you get all your hosts, you census, Shodan, cert.sh, whatever other tool you use. You get a list of all these hosts. Do you feed the host directly to Nmap, or do you pull IP addresses from it and feed it to Nmap?
So I can even just type it out because it's super easy.
And then is that after Nmap, do you directory search everything, or do you pick and choose which ones to directory search based on the interest because you haven't seen it or you haven't tested it out?
So that's an example of a command. So based upon what I haven't, so I will, once I have my Nmap output, I'll look at what hosts I've seen. And if I've seen those hosts, I automatically disregard them, because I'm only looking for stuff that's either new or stuff that I can confidently say I haven't tested. Because I don't keep a list of this, but I have a pretty good memory. So I'm able to like on the fly, I can look at something and I can be like, oh yeah, I remember brute forcing that. And if I don't remember testing it, then I go and test it again. Because for the, you're never going to go wrong testing an application that you tested 100 times.
Right.
It's the definition of madness, but it works. But I'll just go through, test everything I haven't tested, run all my brute forces, and then from there it's just a matter of getting lucky. It really is. I'll have weeks where I don't find any bugs, and I'll have other weeks where I find a heap of them. Like an example of a bug that I just found, which is fixed now, which I can talk about at a high level. Verizon Media, don't sue me. So Verizon Media had this application. I won't tell you what application it was, but they had an application, and I noticed that if I hit the doc root would always redirect me the same way, even though there had to be like the doc root had to actually be responding. Like it wasn't giving me a 404 for invalid input. It would always give me a 302 to another host. So immediately I'm like, okay, this has to be a fucking WAF, right? There's nothing else that this can be. And I'm like, interesting. So they've actually used a WAF to block access to the doc root, because to use the application, you had to be one directory deep. So I was like, all right, maybe I can use the application, find something where I'm able to actually traverse backwards.
Mm-hmm.
And what I ended up finding was at like /directory /API /user /Naffy, you could then do // and that would just take you back to the API directory.
Right.
But then you could do 2 of them and 3 of them and 4 of them. And when you did 4 of them, what it actually gave you was this splash page for the doc root, which was corp.wildcard.com. So from there, I'm like, all right, fuck. So if I actually just traversed back into the doc root, and I'm like, all right, well, if I traverse back into the doc root, what would be here that they would actually not want me to be able to access? Mm-hmm. So I went and looked up, because it wasn't a custom solution. It was an off-the-shelf product. I went and looked up the security releases for that product. And from there, I actually then went onto GitHub and pulled down a Git commit, which was all of the paths for that application.
Wow.
I then went and ran that, using the traversal. So like directory, dot slash. Then I started my brute force there. So I'm actually brute forcing inside of the document root at that point.
Yeah.
And yeah. And then from there,
Smart.
I was able to find they actually took the app offline very quickly because
Nice.
those damn incident response teams, they actually do what they're getting paid for, which I was pretty impressed by. But before I lost access to that application, I was able to find, several critical issues. And had I had more time, because it was some Oracle piece of garbage, I probably would have been able to pop that, because it was consuming XML in weird and wonderful ways and giving you very, very interesting errors when you supplied it with malicious XML, which indicated that it was vulnerable. Plus, like, having looked up the source for how those API endpoints worked, which, by the way, was fucking cool, because you'd look up one of these API endpoints and there was no results for them on Google, like literally,
Right?
Because like these are like so custom Oracle bullshit that a lot of them are just like completely undocumented. So I found the source for some of them, and they were all disabling the security features that XML have to stop you from using external entities and reading local files, SRF, all that fun shit. So that's an example of like a bug chain in something that I'd seen and tested several times. It was just that, like, I woke up one day and I was like, how does this actually fucking work? And, made a couple assumptions, because you have to make a couple assumptions. And from those assumptions, you're able to find security issues.
Yeah.
But you've got to work from a base of some kind. Like, unless you've got a methodology for testing and you're trying to create outcomes, you're not going to get where you want to get to. But like, for that story, like the real thing that I want to point out there is, like, the reason I found that and other people wouldn't have is that I looked at what was happening and I said, okay, baselined against every other fucking web application I've ever seen, that is not the expected outcome from that behavior. So why would that be? And from there, I just made some assumptions and it worked out.
That's fucking insane, man. That's very, very creative and cool. You got a shout out in the chat saying this is the second time I'm hearing Naffy, and he still goes deep in his story. It's amazing. So the chat appreciates it, man. So thank you for sharing that. So we talked about your tools. We talked about a little bit of your background, your take on OSCP. We touched on coding. You gave some advice on how to learn stuff for people that are new. You mentioned that you pretty much do this as like a full-time job, 6 to 8 hours a day, almost every day. Do you deal with any burnouts at all?
Yeah, dude. Like, I'm at the point now with computer security where, like, I fundamentally love and hate what I do. Like, it's like, what do you do? What do you do when the disease that's keeping you alive is slowly killing you, right?
Right.
Like it's a hard one, because there's those quotes like, if you love what you do. Did my laptop just die? No, it's
no,
good.
You're good. You're here.
There's quotes like, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And like, yeah, to a point, but like, this is fucking work, man. Like, I'm working here at this point. Like, I just took 4 or 5 months off from hacking. Like, I didn't hack anything from November till April, roughly.
Mm-hmm.
And then within 3 days of starting again, I was like, yeah, fuck this. And I'm already kind of like over it again. It's and not to dishearten anyone. It's just that, like, when you've been doing this for a while, there's only so many bugs you can find before you stop getting that, that happy feeling inside when you find a security issue.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't want to be depressing, but that's the reality of the situation. As far as burnouts, I take time off. I try and do other things. I'm trying to get hobbies, trying to find other passions and other interests that aren't related to hacking computers, because it can get a bit much. But as far as burnout, if you don't like what you're doing, change it. Like, don't kill yourself doing any of this stuff, because there's always going to be another day, and there's
Yeah.
always it's always a new opportunity to learn and a new opportunity for growth. But yeah, for me, I'm just I don't know. I'm still figuring out who I want to be when I grow up, I guess.
Do you deal with imposter syndrome at all?
Yeah, dude. Like, imposter syndrome's a hard one, right? Because like,
Yeah.
I think if you've got imposter syndrome, there's probably two reasons for that, right? There's self-doubt is a normal part of being a human being. Like,
Absolutely.
we always doubt ourselves, because like, on some level, I think there's probably like a good reason for that, because like, self-doubt's the thing that would have kept you alive when you were thinking like, yeah, should I go pat that lion? Yeah, probably not. Like, like maybe I'll second guess that action. But like, self-doubt is always like, as human beings, we have too much time to think. So
Hmm.
self-doubt's always going to creep into it. But like, I would argue, if you've got imposter syndrome and there's going to be two reasons for that. Like, you either have it because like, it's a normal thing, or you're not challenging yourself enough. There's two reasons that creeps up. Like, I'm at the point now where like, my record speaks for itself. So like,
Yeah.
as far as like self-doubt when it comes to web hacking, like, I obviously know my way around a fucking computer at this point. But I always am gonna have self-doubt, dude, because there's always something you look at that you're like, fuck, like, I wish I could do that. I wish I had those required skills. And I think that's normal. Like, I
Absolutely.
really do. I think societies kind of like breed in us like this idea that we have to be the best and we have to beat everyone else out in order to be successful. And the truth is, just find what makes you happy and just fucking do that thing. Like, you're always going to have self-doubt, but like, if you take that seriously, you'll never get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah. Well said, man. Well said. Um, yeah, I mean, with always seeing things that you wish you could do, I can relate to that, especially with like life hacking events, dude. You have someone like, it's not even like skills like Inti, for example. It's not like a skill set that you wish you had. It's just the patience that he has to poke at something like for days at a time or hours at a time and going and reading all the documentation on it. You see that and you go, am I fucking doing something wrong with my hacking? Because clearly Inti is doing a complete different thing, right?
Well, we've got some smart fucking people in this industry, dude. And the reality is, like, I think it was my friend Bryce that once said to me, this industry is comprised primarily of like the reject children. It's the people that could never figure out how to fit in anywhere else. And I
Yeah.
and I definitely feel like there's some truth to that, right? But as far as Inti goes, once again, like, if you compare yourself, if I compared myself to people that are like seriously fucking good at what they do, dude, I'd never get out of bed. Like, at a certain point, you've just got to figure out what works for you, and you've just got to kind of like run with that premise, because like, unless you figure out a process that works for you and you just keep slogging at that process, like, you'll never get to the point where you can actually compete with the inties of this world and the people that like are hacking in a way that you might look at and think like, wow, like, that's either outside of my skill set or just not the way I think. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, you've got to put those building blocks in place in order to reach those outcomes. But yeah, dude, I feel the same way. Like, Inti's my favorite computer hacker by a wide margin. Like, by a wide
It's
margin.
just like dude just shows up. He like you don't see him the entire day at the event, and then he shows up and does the show and tell, and he's like, every time everybody is mind blown, bro. Like this dude even does it when he's not at the events. When he did it remotely at H1415, dude, he still showed up on the fucking show and tell and had something mind blowing for everybody. The audience, like the reactions you see from NT's show and tells are always fucking insane.
Yeah, dude, I completely agree. And we'll drop Inti's name in the Twitter chat in a second, his handle. But yeah, no, I completely agree. Like, I'm not going to go into massive detail, obviously, because don't sue me, Verizon. But there was an SSRF that Inti found, which was really fucking cool. Like it utilized something which was a documented part of the RFC for mail. And it, like, when I saw it, I was like, wow, like that makes so much fucking sense, because like literally it's how that feature was designed.
Yeah.
Like it's SSRF by design. That's how it fucking works, right? It's just
Mhm.
more that they didn't, like, when writing that RFC, no one sat down and thought about, like, what are the implications of this? And
Right.
and that's a really good point, actually. Like, sidebar is reading RFCs and actually thinking about, like, what is the behavior documented in the RFC, and what is the outcome I'm trying to reach, and
Yep.
kind of trying to marry those two in, a lot of the time gets you where you want to be. Like, I know that when OAuth was new and exciting and shiny, a lot of the bugs that came out of OAuth were literally a direct result of people reading the RFC and being
Right.
like, okay, how does an OAuth flow work, and at what point can I fuck with this? And then, like, just moving forward from there.
And I mean, that goes back to what you said in the beginning, going above and beyond. And Inti is a prime example of that, man. He went back to the building blocks of this particular thing by reading all the documentation and then using the intended functionality to exploit it. Because he went above and beyond, and he put in the time, dude. Like, he disappeared for 8 hours and he came back with a sick bug that nobody even thought about.
Yeah, dude. It's one of those ones where, like, especially deep dives into applications like that, and everyone is affected by this, right? Like, there's this I think he's Argentinian. No, he's from Uruguay. There's a security researcher that's like 17 years old that he wrote a blog post on hacking Google. He got like RCE on Google's fucking cloud environment,
Wow.
GCE, I think it is. But he also, a couple of months before that, he wrote a blog post which was, it didn't get a lot of love, and I was shocked. But he realized that you could basically vhost into internal Google hosts just by literally setting like what you wanted to hit in your host header,
Shit.
which is like that's a bug that's existed since like web servers started being a thing. And it's like, for something like that to affect Google really just shows you that, like, everything you assume about computer security is just completely wrong. Like there's always going to be issues that are just straight up shocking that exist in these applications, because, like, it's a lot of fucking code to deal with. Like, I can't find the blog post anymore, but another bug that I loved on Google, which was just beyond fucking impressive, was some 16-year-old researcher. He went on the Wayback Machine and he looked up FeedBurner.
Okay.
And FeedBurner had moved to, I think it's like feed.corp.google.com or
Right.
some shit like that. And he took the default endpoints, which were referenced in a HTML file on archive.org on FeedBurner, but weren't ever actually in the URL list of like of archive.org. So if you pulled out the URI paths, you wouldn't ever actually see it there. But like if you browse to one of the HTML files, it would be like, yeah, this API endpoint exists for debugging purposes. And he found an LFI in one of those debugging endpoints.
And that's on a corporate Google domain, right?
Yeah, in on Google Corp. And it's like, that to me is just like beyond fucking impressive, right? Because like the logical steps there are, okay, feed.corp.google.com. What was this beforehand? This was FeedBurner. Walking back, where can I find information on FeedBurner as it used to exist? Archive.org.
Absolutely.
And then from what I love about that was that he didn't stop at just what was available. He then went and actually read the old documentation, which was archived. That to me is really, really impressive stuff, and kind of logic that you need to be applying if you want to hack shit.
So as you were talking about the 10K host header thing, the chat, actually people in chat found it and linked it, so people are actually going to look into it.
That's a good ass read. I think that kid got hired by Google, and I'm not the least bit surprised. That
Yeah.
shit was like the bugs that he was pumping out on Google are like, I'm a fan of that guy. Really, really cool fucking hacking.
You said something about Vhost, just about this blog post. You also do a lot of Vhost enumeration. We talked about this a few times. I pinged you saying like, "Holy shit, dude!" Like I was just fucking around with this host. Found some really cool vhosting things. How does yours look? Is it just you purely feed it a list of subdomains that you've never been able to hit, and you just query for it on particular IPs or every IP you find, or is it targeted? Is it organized? How does that look for you?
So V hosting is an interesting one, right? Because like there's two types of there's two types of V hosting that are relevant. So from Verizon Media, and this applies to organizations more generally.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got there's going to be two ways that you're ever going to be hitting something internal. You're either going to be V hosting through an ingress point or a traffic server, which is basically just a fucking ingress point,
Right.
or you're going to be hitting an application at say like I know like admin.site.com, and
Right.
there's going to be a vhost to say admin-dev.site.com if you hit it in the host header. For stuff like the admin.site.com example, I do, but you don't really need to be running a lot like all the subdomains you've ever discovered over that, because like the odds that though you probably still should, because like requests are free, like who gives a fuck, right? You just
Right.
fucking send them. But like the odds of you actually v-hosting to anything useful that isn't going to be an administrative app, I would say are pretty low. Whereas like for ingress points, the world's your oyster.
Yeah.
And the main reason that I test that I do vhost enumeration isn't even actually just to like hit apps that are unreferenced. It's more that like you can get a really good idea of what's alive in an environment by running a subdomain word list that you've already collected. So we're talking like you've got your list of yahoo.com subdomains that you know existed at one point. You feed that into into Apache traffic server, and based on the output, you can actually see what applications are existing in that environment a lot better than you just running fucking scans externally. Because
Right.
like you're going to be able to say, okay, all of these are actually responding, and then you've got a really good signal that those applications exist because because you can see that they exist, and then you can go through and you can just brute force those one by one until you actually find what you're interested in, which is a bug.
Yeah, and I think with Verizon Media V hosting, like looking for virtual host becomes a little bit harder because of how many assets Yahoo has. But if if you're hacking on a smaller bug bounty program, like you said, requests are free, right? Just fucking do every single one of them. And it might
Totally.
pay off. It might be a little bit harder with Google, Facebook, Verizon Media, whatever big programs like that. But honestly, as you said, it's fucking free. Ffuf is free. Requests are free. Just fucking go to sleep and let it run every night, and come back and see what you find.
And the difference is, right, for testing like that is like if you've got a hunch that could work in an environment and the environment's large, spend a day on it. Yeah. There's absolutely no reason that you can't sit down and spend a day on it. The reason that got paid 10 grand, just sidebar, I'm just reading the chat. The reason that bug got paid 10 grand is I guarantee you the implications of that are far worse than what he actually found. Because if you're able to vhost into an internal application, not only are you now accessing an internal application, but you're also bypassing MoMA, which is the SSO solution to access those internal hosts. So like the implications of that are also massive, because suddenly, that's not going to be showing up in logs. There's more implications to that than just simply accessing an internal application. It goes far deeper, which is why they paid it out so well. But
it's not always that complicated though, right? Like I had an instance. I was talking to you about this in particular. I came to you. I was like, "Hey, because I used to not scan for a vhost at some point, and I hit you. And I was like, dude, I just saw this Jira site and I couldn't hit it. Just hit the IP and gave it the vhost for Jira. Sure enough, it opened up and it was an old version that SSRF sitting on it. Easy money in 30-40 minutes, right? And again, the way you said it, requests are free. I'm going to probably get that tatted on me at some point. Requests are free.
Dude, that's the way I look at all of that shit, right? Like people are always like, what do I run at this? Like, what do I hit this with? And I'm like, well, what's the difference? Like, obviously don't do it with like 1,000 threads, like otherwise you'll knock shit offline. But what's the real difference between 20 million requests and 100 million requests?
Yeah.
Like, it's going to take longer, obviously, but like, and once again, like, you would never send 20 million requests to a web server unless you have a pretty good fucking idea there's something there, right? Like, that's a waste of your time at that point. But like, if you're finding an app where like Shabam Shah actually released some sick research on this with he wrote a tool called Common Speak, which queries Google it hits Google BigQuery to pull out because Google BigQuery scrapes GitHub every like 12 hours or some shit, or every day, every week, I forget. It periodically scrapes GitHub, and you can pull out all the paths that have ever been observed.
Yep.
So we had instances where you'd have like one PHP file, which would be like not that fucking interesting, but you're like, all right, if there's a PHP file here, let's pull every .php extension ever observed on GitHub, sort it by how many times it's actually been observed, and run that through. And from there, we were able to extend our attack surface and find some bugs. Like, I think that what I kind of got on here to talk about, and I'll even fucking start rambling about that because it's worth mentioning.
This is your interview, man. You can talk about whatever you like, my friend.
for web app security, man, what it really comes down to is like all of this is about extending an attack surface. Like, the way that you should be thinking about hacking is every single thing that you're doing is like, you want inputs that you can put shit into to get an output, which is a bug. That's mission statement.
Yeah.
Mission statement. So if that's our mission statement, walking back from that, every single action that we perform is wanting to extend an attack surface, whether that be DNS resolutions, subdomain brute forcing, file and directory brute forcing, vhosting, whatever it may be.
Right.
All that we're looking to do is find more dynamic content that we can actually throw bullshit into, that we can get a response from. And if you start looking at hacking like that, and you frame it more as like, how am I extending this attack surface, as opposed to like, how am I hacking? Your outcomes will reflect that.
Yeah.
And that's literally all I do. Like, everything I'm doing, I'm looking at, okay, there's got to be bullshit somewhere. Where does that bullshit live, and how can I access it? And if that's the question that you've got in mind whenever you're hacking something, you're going to end up finding stuff. Because to me, I'm a lot more and obviously you need these web security fundamentals, because it's not always going to be this. Yeah. But for the most part, the stuff that I find and the stuff that I find interesting, it's less testing applications and more extending an attack surface to get to the point where I can test applications, because like that's what'll separate you. Anyone can fucking test an app, right? Like, we've got Burp Suite. We've literally we've idiot-proofed fucking web security testing at this point for the most part. Like, it really is like compared to like even when I started, and like, yeah, there was some good scanning tools out there, but nothing like fucking Burp Suite, dude. Right. Like, that shit is insane. Like, some of the testing that does is stuff that you just like, have you ever seen it hit for it does like second order blind Oracle SQL injections, where it uses like where it calls out, it uses like I think it's like extract value to actually get a ping back via DNS.
Yeah.
Fucking like, dude, who is testing for that, man? No one is doing that testing, dude, except for Burp Suite. But yeah, like we've idiot-proofed web security to the point now that realistically the web skills aren't what you need. It's the discovery to find those web applications that you can test, which is infinitely more valuable. And that's just my opinion as well. Like, I know quite a few people that test applications that are very successful at it because they do deep dives. Like, I had a chat with someone recently that found a heap of bugs in gemini.yahoo.com, which were objectively insane issues, because they were saying, okay, this is consuming this type of data. What are the possible ways that this could actually be being processed and interpreted on the back end? And then they just went through every single way that could be happening, and actually made the assumption that they'd already tried to fix it. So they were bypassing fixes they didn't know existed. And they were able to successfully like own a bundle of shit there. because they made the logical assumption that if it had existed that long and was doing something, that there was going to have to be something stopping them. So as a result, they obfuscated their payloads to bypass fixes they didn't even know had been put in place, and it
Yeah.
worked.
Two things. A shameless plug. You talked about BigQuery. I'm going to shamelessly plug myself. I just did a video on actually doing what Shubs was doing. I shouted him out and Tom Nom Nom. So if you guys are interested in what Naffy just explained for BigQuery, how to get all these different top files from different extensions, I have a video on YouTube you can check out. But I want to talk about Burp Suite. You mentioned Burp a couple of times. Do you use Burp regularly, or do you use it when you are just purely fuzzing an API or an application for different things?
So I use Intruder religiously. I'm a big fan of Burp Intruder.
Okay.
Because my normal workflow is like, I don't really use the scanner unless I have a good indicator that something's there, or I found a large application via other discovery methods that I want to actually test all the way through, and I don't want to put the time in. I'll go through, step through the application, understand how it works, make sure I'm covering the whole thing. Then I'll run a burp scan, and while that burp scan's running, I normally will actually fuzz it. So like if you look up Jay Haddock's released a bundle, or I know sec lists by Daniel Meisler.
Yep.
In sec lists, if you go through, there's a bundle of fuzzing word lists there. And I don't remember the exact names of them, but if you look up the Unix one, the Windows one, and the LFI one, that'll give you enough coverage that based upon what you're going to get in your output when you run Intruder, you'll be able to actually, because with Intruder, you can sort by status code and content length. What you're looking to do when you're fuzzing is you're looking to get any response or several responses a lot of the time, which deviate from what you're expecting. So like an example of that would be like, because it includes blind SQL injection payloads, you might have a, you run it through a get parameter and everything responds in one way, but like one single quote space or one space equals, one single quote space or space 1 equals 1. There we go. We got there. Like that, or 1 equals 2, like that will give you like an appreciatively different response. And you'll see that either in the content length, normally in the content length, though you can sometimes see indicators of that in the status code as well. And from there you can be like, okay, this gave me a different response. Why was that? And like another example that I've seen quite often with intended SSRFs is throwing characters like hash or question mark in, because like what you'll see sometimes is, especially in Java environments, if you put those characters in, what you're going to do is you're going to actually break the underlying request that was running. And a lot of the time you'll get the response where it'll be like, I'm just typing this out, it's easier. So like you might be hitting like that's the request it's making. And if you do something like, but you can't see that. That's the request it's making and you can see that, but site.com is being passed to a backend host.
Right.
If you then do something like that, what you may end up getting in the output, which I've seen before, is you might get a response like this. And from there, you can actually you're gonna actually be able to.
You can see the endpoints that it's going to query for, or whatever that is. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And from there, you can start to do really fun stuff where you can firstly, like, you can rebuild a query if it's using parameters. You can start to insert your own parameters, or if there's parameters that are already there, because we control the URI, we can start to add parameters. We can do all kinds of fun shit as well. For that example, we can start to actually traverse back and see whether we can actually get the output from other things besides what it's expecting to return. But that's just an example, right? But like for fuzzing, like I would say that besides Nmap and all the DNS bullshit and all the active reconnaissance, I spend a considerable amount of time fuzzing shit, because like there's no reason if you've got an input to not just be throwing bullshit at that. obviously, you know, I would consider it personally a waste of my fucking time to just go and do that for everything. But like when you've got a fairly good idea that there's like this piece of functionality is interesting, you should probably be fuzzing that. And if you're not fuzzing that, the question I would ask you is why not? Because
Right.
there's literally no good reason. Because all you're going to get from fuzzing that is more information you didn't have beforehand, which you can actively use to try and get like some foothold or some leverage over that application that you can abuse.
Yeah, I've never actually done that personally. I've done like traversals, but I've never actually just put a pound sign or hashtag whatever you call it to see what it does.
It
Uh,
works it works really well in Java environments, man. And the
Good
other
to
thing that
know.
you can do obviously is encode it.
Yeah, yeah,
And you can, single encode it
double
or double
encoded.
encode it, because a lot of the time, if you're, and fun fact for everyone here that may not be, may not know this. I'm not sure if this is new information. If you're sending this to an application, a lot of the time, like if you're wanting that to hit a backend host and you're sending it like that, you're not actually hitting the backend host unless you're URL encoding that so that it gets passed to the backend host. What you're actually doing is you're just literally just fucking sending it to the app. So like the first app, not the backend. So
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you want to be making sure that anything that you're sending through is actually going all the way through, not just like being reflected in, yeah. I think that makes sense.
That's a very cool technique. I've never actually played with that a lot myself. I'm gonna report back and let you know if it works out.
Yeah, yeah, dude, you'll definitely find some interesting stuff, and like whether or not they're exploitable bugs is a whole other conversation. Because
Yeah,
like a lot of the time, they're unfortunately not going to be, but you can get a really good idea of where things live and how things work from doing stuff like that. Especially for an environment like Yahoo's, where if everyone doesn't know this, like anything that you're seeing from Yahoo, where like it's making queries, a lot of the time it's actually passing that to backend APIs like Vespa, YQL, all that bullshit in order to actually retrieve data that it then gives back to the user. So if you're able to actually break that retrieval process, a lot of the time you can get an understanding of what's being retrieved and how it's being retrieved. And from there, you can potentially exploit that.
Speaking of YQL, um, do you still find any vulns on YQL itself? Because I know there was a
So
lot of stuff that was happening on YQL for a while while everyone was going through it.
So I got I found some bugs with a dude named Rezo and a few other people that I think I was pretty much single-handedly responsible for the final nail in the coffin for YQL, because it was pretty fucking bad, dude. Like YQL had a bundle of console endpoints, which are now they're fixed everywhere. Like if you find one, you would be literally like, there's no fucking reason that you would find one on the internet anymore,
Right.
because they decommissioned them everywhere. Like
Finally.
I watched it go offline, and it's dead now. It's there's one YQL host that's been up consistently, and that host is patched, so all those bugs don't work. But for YQL, dude, that shit was fucking garbage. Like straight up. Like it was not designed with security in mind at
Yeah.
all. Like, yeah, there was horrible, horrible app. But yeah, YQL was an interesting one. I found some good stuff there. Mainly like, in fact, I probably shouldn't talk about that. But yeah, I found some bugs in YQL, and they're all fixed now.
Yeah, I was
And
wondering today
YQL,
because we came up some with YQL stuff that was on like sports and sports fantasy, and usually you would get hit with those locked.htmls when you would directly research it, but this time it was like nothing coming back, and I was just like, well, holy shit, where did
I
these
never,
go?
I never fully understood how the sports stuff worked for YQL.
Yeah,
So like we're in the same boat there. It never behaved the same way that YQL hosts behaved elsewhere on the network. So I put a couple hours into it, and then I eventually said, and this is another thing, knowing when to say fuck that and just walking away from it is infinitely valuable.
when do you draw the
like
line with that, dude? When do you know? When do you know to stop looking at something that's not interesting?
diminishing returns, dude. Like if you're looking at something for, I would say realistically, because I hack very quickly when I'm going through something that isn't a massive fucking app. If you're
Yeah,
looking at something for like half an hour or an hour and you're not getting any indicators at all that there's a problem, you should probably not be looking at it any further.
Yeah.
Because like unless you can see something that is like, okay, based upon this indicator, I can see that there could potentially be an issue with this. Unless you have like a plan of action and you can see like on a way to implement that plan of action, it's best to just move on to like greener pastures and just find something that's weaker or more likely to be exploited. Because this is all just a this is all just like a, how do I say this? Everything that you're doing needs to be a return on your time and a return on your investment. And if you're investing a certain amount of time with no return, yeah, there could be an issue there. And if you're just fucking interested, by all means, go ahead. But like, I do this shit to make money. Yeah. So like, if I'm doing this on 8 hours, I need to be finding a bug. Because if I'm not finding a bug, then I'm not looking in the right areas, and I need to refine my approach.
Yeah, it's a valid point. It's just something that I get asked a lot during the streams and on Twitter. It's just, when do I know it's enough to give up on something? When do I stop? And it's just, you just gotta know when to, you just gotta learn it on your own. And when you see there's you've spent hours on this thing and you're not really making any progress at all, then it might be a good time to throw in the towel, right?
For sure.
And make a note of it for later, maybe.
And I think to add to that, like having a fresh set of eyes, like the amount of applications that I've looked at, not found shit, and then I literally I think that I keep this shit running on the back burner in my head a lot of the time.
Right.
Because I'll be in the shower and I'll have a moment and I'll have like a shower thought and I'll be like, wait a second, couldn't I do that to that application? And then I'll walk out and I'll like give it a go and it works, and I'm like, fuck yeah. Like that happens so often to me. Because like sometimes if you're not able to actually exploit something, just spend some time thinking about it. Like you don't actively need to be hacking all the time. And I would argue that like reading and spending time thinking about stuff is equally as valuable as the time you actually spend on the tools and trying to breach apps and infrastructure.
Yeah.
For sure.
2 more things I want to talk to you about, and we'll wrap this up in a little bit just because it is getting to my...
you're good, bro.
One thing I want to ask you is, I think I know the answer to this already, but I'm going to ask you anyways. Do you play any CTFs?
Nah, man. I'm actually really bad at them. Like I find that, sorry, I'm going to get some water. I'm like fucking shaking here from this caffeine. I don't do any CTFs, man. I actually find that I have a lot of trouble with them.
Yeah.
Because they're very contrived, and there's always an outcome. Like, there's always a deliberately vulnerable component. And I'm used to testing applications where there's no deliberately vulnerable component. So like it's a way of testing that I have a lot of trouble with. I just also don't think that they're realistic. I definitely feel like they give you valid skills though. Like I'm not going to deny that. They anyone that's thinking about doing CTFs, I would recommend you do them. I'm not going to be like a purist and be like, no, you should just hack applications.
Right.
Like do whatever you want to do, right? Like, but if you're wanting to get good skills and wanting to learn more about web applications, you should probably be doing CTFs at some junction. Though your mileage may vary, caveat, because I never did them and I hacked plain. So I don't know.
Yeah. Let's talk about collaboration. You said you just said you hacked with a few folks for the YQL stuff, and you pretty much put a nail in the coffin for YQL to get the commission finally. Do you regularly collaborate with people, or is it when people come to you with a almost bug, or when you find something that's pretty interesting that you haven't made progress, you go to people? How does that work?
So it's a little bit of both, man. Like I'll see behavior. Like at the moment, as an example, I've got this application and I've reached out to a few people that someone actually helped me with it last night, where I could see that there was an encrypted signature, and the encrypted signature was able to be bit flipped. So if you don't know what bit flipping is, it's basically where like if you've got like a string and you slightly modify that string, like make an A a B or a B a C or a C a D, like just change a character.
Okay.
Normally, the expected behavior would be that signature would fail. But a lot of the time, if signatures aren't signed correctly, what you're able to do is you're able to slowly bit flip that signature and still have that signature validated as being true, the signed signature, but you're actually modifying the plain text string inside of that encrypted signature.
Oh, okay.
So I've got this bug at the moment that I'm actually probably going to spend some time on today because I'm wide awake now, which is essentially I can see that, I missed a step on that. So for this encrypted signature, there's like several endpoints. And you should always test for shit like this because this shit fucking works, right? If you're seeing the same encrypted question mark signature, try, like, if the signature is meant to go to /request, try and send it to different API endpoints. Because a lot of the time what you'll see is that encrypted signature will actually fail when you try and send it to a different API endpoint. And when it fails, it will actually dump out the plain text string a lot of the time. So what I was able to do, because I could see that behavior happening, I can bit flip the encrypted signature on an API endpoint it's not meant for till it looks the way I want it to look. Then I can send it to the API endpoint it was meant for, and it will validate. So that's an example of a bug where I can see it working. I know it works. But now what I have to figure out is okay, great. We can manipulate an encrypted signature. Who gives a fuck, right? Great. It's a cryptographic weakness. It's a low to medium impact bug. So I'm probably going to spend the day today looking at how I can effectively, with some collaborators, to loop back on your question, because I am answering that in a long way. Roundabout kind of way. I'll then send, what I've figured out and where I've gotten to a couple of other people. And normally they'll put a couple of hours in and find or relay race that bug to the finish line. Because I'm really good at finding really interesting behavior and things that are indicative of vulnerabilities. But I'm not always that good at exploiting them, because for some of this stuff, it's incredibly complex and it just needs a different set of eyes sometimes.
Well, very cool, man. This was very helpful. Just by reading the chat, people have been just giving you kudos for doing all this, and I genuinely appreciate you being here. And I want to make a comment saying you actually are one of the reasons why I got into the recon game a little bit. Seeing all the fun you were having with Yahoo was just okay, this fool's having too much fun by himself. Let's get into that space and kind of putting the pieces together based on what you have seen, what you have said, what other people have said. So it's been a lot of fun seeing you grow as a hacker and also learning a bunch of stuff from you. And this interview, I think for a lot of people that are hacking on Yahoo regularly, I think would appreciate the shit out of it, because you didn't hold back and you were really, really willing to share. So I really appreciate it. And I want to kind of jump into our second half of the interview, which is more fun than just the technical part.
All right. Yeah. And thank you for having me as well, dude.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely, man. So the way the second part works is it's just mostly for fun. I'm going to ask you some questions about your experience, and then at the end of it, I give you one word, and you tell me the first thing that pops into your head. And I have a lot of stuff for you, because you and I have had a few drunken nights, and we've had some fun. So I have some of the stuff I want to bring up. So let's get into it. First program you ever hacked on?
Yahoo.
First bounty you ever received?
Yahoo.
Do you know how much it was?
6.4 thousand.
Do you remember what kind of a bug you found for that?
Yeah, it was a shell upload in a customer portal.
Did you do anything fun with that money? You said you quit your job, I think.
Yeah, so I went out to an extremely expensive restaurant in the city with my girlfriend at the time, and then I quit my job, and yeah, I bought a lot of Bitcoin pretty early on, which I then spent on various internet marketplaces.
What about any significant purchases from your bug bounties at all?
Yeah, man. In terms of significant purchases,
anything memorable?
I don't know, dude. I've traveled the world. Yeah. I've seen a big chunk of the planet now. What did I buy that was cool? Oh, I bought my cousin's laptops.
That's cool.
When they were teenagers, I bought them good laptops because I figured them getting a good education was important.
Good for you, man. That's awesome.
I've donated. I bought books. I don't know, man. Money tends to come and go with me. I just try and do the right thing and have a good time. But yeah, I don't really take great stock in possessions. I don't really own anything I care about that much.
No, it's just anything. The traveling is great. You've got to travel the world by doing something you enjoy doing.
Yeah,
What's your
dude.
favorite country you've been to?
Taiwan by a wide margin. I spend a lot of time in Thailand, but if I was going to go and spend a week or two anywhere, I'd really recommend Taiwan Taipei specifically, but I would recommend Taiwan to everyone here. It's a beautiful culture. It's very very different from the rest of the world, and the people are very friendly, which I appreciate.
Um, any hackers you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, yeah. Give a shout out to Shabam Shah for putting me on this shit.
Love
It's
Shabam, man. Great dude.
over 10 years strong, and we're still fucking hacking computers. Like, we out here. Who would have thought that it'd end up like this? It was only a kiss. It was only a kiss.
What about green hats?
Yeah, Bryce Case, my boy, got the wrist tattoo to prove it. Fuck, shit, it wasn't. There we go. We're gonna get that one up there.
The green hat hackers?
Yeah, that's it. The green hat on the wrist. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like Shabam, fucking Bryce. A lot of my mentors when I was early, a guy named Michael McKinnon, was pretty instrumental in me becoming who I am. Casey Ellis gave me a lot of direction really early on when I was a teenager, and was probably not doing the right thing on and off a computer screen.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have a lot of time for him too. Yeah, those are the ones that come to mind.
Very cool. Anybody that you want to collaborate with? It doesn't even have to be bug bounties, but anybody in particular that you would like to eventually work with or hack with?
Who would I want to collaborate with? Yeah, I'd love to sit down and actually hack with Agari. I know you're gonna have him on here at some point
Next week.
but yeah, dude, I'm a big fan of Agari's stuff. Like, as far as fanboying goes, Agari is probably I'm probably butchering his fucking name as well, right? Like, because it's French, so it's probably. But, yeah, I'm definitely a big fan of that guy's work. He released some slides called server-side browsing considered harmful, which you can find on Google.
Yep.
It changed the way that I looked at computer security and changed the way that I was looking at hacking, because he successfully demonstrated bug chaining in a way that I didn't really think or realize was possible, and it kind of made me reassess the whole hacking thing. So like that I read that, and I think that was 2015, and that was that blew, or maybe 2014. That blew my fucking mind. But yeah, I'd love to collaborate with him at some point and actually sit down with him for like a day or two and like breach a major organization.
Yeah, if you are wondering about Agari FR, I threw his profile link onto the chat. He'll also be here next Sunday. So tune in if you want to pick his brain as well. Favorite tool besides Nmap? I assume there's another tool.
That's it. Yeah, besides Old Faithful. Like, yeah, dude, Ffuf is pretty gangster. Like, Yahoy solved a problem in industry and did it with style. I need to actually sit down with him and get some more features added to that, because even using it as a power user, I've got some ideas on how that could be made a whole lot better. The next thing I want to see Ffuf do is I want to be able to run Ffuf across a range, and I want to be able to import that data into a UI where I can easily sort that data. So I can actually go through and just tap the down key, and every time I see a response, which is a bad response, click that response and have that response automatically disappear from the output. So all I'm left with is good responses. So I can just run a brute force across the 24 and then very quickly identify all content that exists there.
Wow, that would be very cool. Actually, I would love to see.
Yeah,
that.
dude, it'll definitely change the way people do brute forcing.
Yeah.
It's about time someone actually sat down and did the visualization.
Yeah.
Because we all run the brute forces, but no one's actually figured out how to visualize the output data in a meaningful way so that you can go and actually use that.
That'd be very useful. Yeah, yeah. Having visual stuff outside of a terminal would be very nice, dude.
For sure, bro.
um, any hobbies you want to mention? I know you do a lot of running. You've picked that up recently a lot.
Yeah, I've been running a bundle before the world had a fucking pandemic because we like to eat bats apparently.
Apparently.
Um, fuck. Yeah, before the plague, I was doing Muay Thai, which is Thai kickboxing,
Okay.
which I was getting into and I was a big fan of. Outside of that, just punching shit generally, not walls. Mainly. Yeah, I do a lot of shadow boxing. I try and stay fit. I've been reading a lot. Those are the hobbies that I enjoy. That, and I listen to probably 5 or 6 hours worth of music every day. I
Yeah.
go through genres, stuff I'm interested in. Yeah, I listen to back-to-back albums.
Favorite artist? Give me three of your favorite artists, man.
All right, if I was going to tell you to check out any artist, like obviously the Beatles need to
Yeah.
get a mention there just because it's so timeless. The Beatles, I've been listening to a lot of Fleetwood Mac recently.
Oh, okay.
And what's my last one? I checked out this artist last night called Tricky, which was really dope. I actually am going to go listen to a Tricky album after this. Yeah, I'd recommend those three. And then besides that, if you hop on Discogs, you can find a top 500 list that was made by people that like music and lists. So you know it's good. And go through the top 500 albums of all time. I don't agree that it's the top 500 albums of all time, but it's definitely a good place to start.
Yeah.
There's some really cool shit on there.
I gotta give that a try. I recently started doing, instead of just listening to random songs, I go through albums. I haven't thought about doing the five top 100. That's actually a pretty good idea. I gotta go through that.
Yeah, dude, definitely give it a go. And the thing that I do, which I'd recommend for you, is if you put an album on and you don't have anything in common with it, listen to it and try and figure out what you can appreciate about it.
Yeah.
Because it's the thing about music, right, is like if you're listening to something and you're not getting something out of it, don't get me wrong, some music is objectively shit, right? But like if you're listening to something that's like that a large amount of people really, really enjoy and you're not enjoying it or you're not taking something from it, that's probably more a problem with you as opposed to the music. And like, and granted, we can all like what we like, but you should be able to listen to something someone else created, and like you don't have to listen to it twice, but you should be able to take something from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah. Someone mentioned listen to Takashi or what?
Yeah, I never got into that kind of stuff, man. Like, I think the world's a bleak enough place as it is. Like, I don't need to listen to 20-something-year-old rappers talk about how like they're rich. It seems to be like how do I say this? I can get into a little bit, but I'm more interested in like what I perceive as music that has like a little bit more depth to it. But
Yeah.
I'll definitely check. I definitely check a lot of that stuff out. It's just like I don't know. It's just kind of like not what I would like. It's not easy listening.
I don't
I'm
either,
more
man. Don't. Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you, man. I don't
yeah,
understand it. I'll
you
check
know,
it
busy.
out. Yeah, I'll check it out
Yeah.
once. Just go through it. It's not for me, then I'm done. I'm not probably gonna go back to it. But it was funny as you were saying shit music. Someone said Takashi, and
Dude, I checked out I was actually blown away, right? For such an egotistical fucking prick, like Kanye West makes some good ass
Oh yeah,
music,
man.
dude. Like what blows me away is like Kanye West as a person, like 2 thumbs
Yeah, yeah,
down.
definitely. But
Kanye West,
music, man.
2 thumbs up, dude. Like Kanye West has made some amazing
Bro, even his
stuff.
church music that he made, his last album that was mostly like, it was a kind of like a church music. Even that was fucking great. I'm not into church music and I still listen to it, bro.
Dude, I'll check it out, man. Like College Dropout
Dude,
is
one of
is
his
one of his
best albums.
yeah, one of his first albums, and like College Dropout, like that is objectively one of the best. Like on a list of like 1,000 top albums, it would have to be on there because like that is one of the best albums of all time. Like it's fucking good.
Graduation and college dropout for sure. I think those are the two. I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this. I also really enjoyed 808 and Heartbreak just because of the fact that it was completely out of his like normal music, and he was going through such a shitty time in his life that it just made sense the way he did it, and I genuinely enjoyed Heartless and Pinocchio's freestyle and those kinds of songs that he had out.
Yeah, dude, I completely agree. Like, I never thought, because I used to be a fucking elitist for this stuff. Like, if you had to ask me at 20 if I'd ever be listening to Kanye West, like, casually, I'd be like, no, fuck you. But like, I definitely can appreciate it musically, and I think a lot of that has to do with, yeah, as I said, just sitting down and just trying to find common ground with a lot of these musicians, because like everyone's trying to tell a story, right? Everyone's trying
Yeah.
to express something. I think that's kind of like why we exist on this planet, right? To like, you want to create something, you want to have like some memory, some like image left behind, and I think a lot of musicians kind of do that really well. They're able to speak from the heart and speak honestly, and it's something I appreciate.
Yeah, I agree. Let's jump in the last part of it. So I'm gonna give you a word. You can either give me a word back, a sentence, whatever pops into your mind first. I'll start off easy. Recon.
Recon, fucking an annoying process.
Verizon Media.
Fuck. Money.
HackerOne.
Bounty program.
Live hacking events.
Drinking beers.
Ffuf or Ffuf.
Brute forcer.
Burp Suite.
Scanning tool.
Intruder.
Buzzing.
Let's talk about YT Cracker.
Rapper. My friend.
Shubs.
Fucking Shabam, dude. I love that guy. Holy shit, dude.
I forgot. Nmap.
Scanner.
Thought leader.
Fuck. I've got nothing for that, dude. Fucking God, dude. The whole thought. Fuck yeah, I'm not gonna start ranting, dude.
I got one more. You're gonna like influencers.
Fuck, man. Oh my god. The whole dude, I get it, and I get why people do it, because like at the end of the day, like this is all a good thing, but like it pisses me off that this industry tends to promote and like really like allow people to rise to the top based upon nothing more than them saying that they actually matter. And like I guess that's a metaphor for life itself, right? But like I definitely find like the Twitter crowd and a lot of the thought leadership that goes on in InfoSec is like the people that are the loudest, like normally, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not being critical. Like I think what you do is fucking fabulous. Like, you're helping young people predominantly get into industry and figure out how they fucking can actually make a difference, and like actually helping them work and all kinds of get jobs and all kinds of cool shit. Like that shit's awesome, dude. It's just fundamentally fucking awesome. But like a lot of the influencer bullshit where it's like, I went on Showdown and I found out there's a power grid in fucking Texas that's available from the internet. Like, dude, like, fuck off, man. Like, we all know that there is like, I could hop on Showdown now, dude, and I could probably hack the Pentagon, like legitimately. Like, it's not that impressive, dude. Like fundamentally, they're doing it because they're insecure people and they want to be able to like have, some semblance of meaning. And the reality is like, the only people that give a fuck about that don't know any better. Like
all I'm thinking about right now is the Twitter thing you were doing one day. You were just not stopping. I'm not gonna say who or what, but you were just going in.
Yeah.
You were just going in. I'm not gonna say anything. I have this person blocked, to be honest. But just seeing your tweets that day, I was just like, God damn it, Naffy, you're gonna fucking piss somebody off.
I was sitting there and I saw like 6 or 7 of them, and I'm like, yeah, dude, you're such a fucking hero. Like, thanks for making the internet safer. Like go fuck yourself. Because even that, dude, like, how do you possibly think that you're on the right side of like any kind of narrative when you're like, yeah, so like I just went on Showdown and I found that I can hack into like, this child's play center. And so like I figured the responsible thing to do was just to post it on Twitter.
Right.
Like what the what the
I
fuck
don't
is
get
wrong
the
with you?
shaming thing, man. Like I saw you. I'm gonna stop this for a sec, this game, but I saw you tweet about this thing today or yesterday. It was just like, what's the fucking point of writing a blog post because this company didn't want to thank you for your fucking bug because you didn't have permission to hack on them? What is the point in shaming companies? I still don't get it to this day. What are you
Dude,
gonna accomplish? Because you know what you do when you shame somebody like that? You're not shaming the CISO or the security team. You're fucking ruining the PR's team's day, dude. The PR team's that's gonna deal with it. They're not even involved in the stuff that you did. They have nothing to do with it, but they have to clean up after you because you have a stick up your back and you want to go after the security team because you didn't get a thank you message back from them.
realistically, dude, when it comes down to it, if you don't have permission to test someone, and this is definitely deviating from the 15-year-old Naffy, but if you don't have permission to test someone, you just shouldn't be fucking testing them, dude. We're all adults here, right? And like, if you came to my house and just like walked into my house and sat down and made yourself a coffee and you were like, you didn't lock your door, like, I'm not going to thank you. I'm going to tell you to fuck off, dude. Just because there's a distinction that you're like on the internet and therefore this is free reign, like it's total bullshit, dude.
Man.
And I think like it speaks to the immaturity of a lot of the people that are taking part in this space, because like you're clearly socially maladjusted if you are thinking that is an appropriate use of your time or an appropriate response to any interaction. And like for that guy that went and breached that major clothing retailer, and I'm not even gonna go,
but I mean, like at the end of the day, man,
that's ridiculous, dude. And like I even when I woke up this morning, the kids like put me on blast on Twitter and shit. And I'm just like from up here, I can't even see him, dude. This kid's like an ant to me, man. I'm just like, yeah, cool, all right. You just go about your day.
Like I get that bugs happen, right? You're browsing some site, you mess with something, you find a bug, you report them. I've done that plenty of times. I literally did that last week. I was buying something. My invoice number, I literally changed it by one. I was like, holy shit, someone else's address came up in all their order. I literally in my email wrote, I started my email with saying, hey, before I give you this vulnerability report, I want you to understand I don't want money. I'm not trying to extort you. I don't want anything. If you do end up giving me something, up to you. Please don't take this as a attempt of me hacking you, but I just want you guys to secure this endpoint because A, you're leaking everybody's information, and B, that information includes mine, and I don't want that out there. And I didn't expect anything.
Right there, that's responsible behavior, right? Like, oh my god,
I didn't tweet about it. It's a big company, man. It's a huge corporation. Didn't tweet about it. They didn't even say, "Hey, ad company, can you DM me?" Fuck that. I'm emailing support. I'm emailing so and so.
So there was a big company. I forget. It was some kind of financial company that got breached. Like a decade ago by an Australian, right? And so that financial company, he ended up getting off on criminal charges, but to demonstrate that they were vulnerable, he exploited an IDR, which was a pretty serious IDR. I think from memory, it was like tax return information or something like that. It was some serious breach, but he pulled out 500 records.
Oh yeah.
And what they went to court with was like, and I actually don't disagree with the argument, was pulling out one record or two records
to test it out. Yeah,
that's like demonstrating that the bug works, right? Like that's fair, but like pulling out 500 records, like that's egregious as hell. Like it's like the reality is, and I'll say it to everyone here plainly, if you don't have permission to test someone, thinking that you have the right to test them anyway is narcissistic. Like just because it's on the internet doesn't give you permission to test it. Like the fact that you would even think that in the first place to me is just ludicrous. But because there's enough businesses for you to actually test that have bug bounty programs that want your reports, for you to just go and hack some random bullshit because it feels good, and then to shame the company and be like, oh, this is a $10 billion business, they should care about me. Like, fuck off.
They didn't ask you to do it though. At the end of the day, you're not welcome to do it. If you're gonna do it, just you shouldn't expect anything and just drop the email. If they don't respond, then they don't respond. At least they got it fixed, right? You shouldn't be chasing a fucking recognition, I think.
If you want attention, ask your mum for a hug. That's the reality. There's plenty of bug bounty programs that are willing to have you take part, and there's no reason And the difference is like whether anything was fixed or not is completely irrelevant because like you shouldn't have been testing in the first place. Like morally and ethically, you don't get the right to just decide arbitrarily that because you're interested in something and you found a vulnerability in it, that everyone has to capitulate to your demands. Like it's a ridiculous statement, and the fact that anyone would even go into a public arena saying that is really just a reflection of the immaturity of the individuals involved.
Yeah, it's just I don't agree with the publicly shaming thing. If you're doing this just to help someone, then you shouldn't really care for whatever comes out of it. But let's move on. I have a few more I want to ask you. I have a few more words for you. OSCP.
Yeah, certification.
Hackers helping hackers.
A charity that no longer exists.
Pentester Lab.
Sniff. Louis, the guy that owns it is fucking cool as shit.
He's a really cool dude.
Really, really talented French hacker. Well, I guess he's an Australian hacker now. I think that he's I think he moved from I'm not sure if he's a citizen, but he's definitely here.
Yeah.
He's been here a while.
Oh, he's in the chat. He's in the chat. It says right.
Are you an Australian?
Shut up. He says I fucking am.
There we go. Yeah, nice.
Yeah, even give you a mate, bro. He gave you a mate. He said,
because I wasn't sure, right? Because I was just remembering, like, the first time I met him, I was like, he's got to have been in Australia, like, nearly a decade now. I was like, I think
I always assumed he was Australian until I met him at Upstate Cali. I was like, holy shit, he has a French accent. He's definitely not, doesn't have an Australian accent.
Yeah, he's honorary Australian. He's definitely like you see him in Australia, oh yeah, it's just another guy. He starts speaking, you're like, all right, yeah, there might be something else going on here.
Sure. Green Hat.
Man, have you heard that fucking song? I'm gonna link that song here. It's the one contribution I'm gonna make for today. If you haven't heard this song, this is a song.
That's Bryce's song, right?
Yeah, this is a song pretty much about my life. It sums up the last couple of years.
Go. All right.
Right. There we go. Check that out.
And two more, DEF CON.
Fuck, a shit show, dude. Like, oh my god, what a horrible conference.
Okay, speaking of that, then Black Hat.
Dude, I walked the floor at Black Hat once. I walked in there, right? And I was in Black Hat for about 15 minutes, and I was like, why the fuck am I here? And I literally just like walked back out and just like went somewhere else. I was like, yeah, that was a waste of $600.
All right, well, this was Supreme Leader Naffy, also known as nnwakelam. Chat, give it up for Naffy for being here and staying, coming up so early and giving us an interview for 2 hours. This is probably one of my longest interviews I've done. Let's spam the chat with some emotes. Thank you so much for joining me, man. This was a very, very fun interview. Very, very informative. I learned a ton, and I'm sure everybody watching this right now or watching it on YouTube also appreciates it. Thank you so much for being here, man.
Happy to do it, man. And if anyone ever wants to reach out to me, I'm not interested in helping you set up tools. You can do that yourself. But if you find anything that's like actually a vulnerability and you're interested in like the implications of that or how you can take that further, I enjoy hacking. And like if you come to me like, hey, I got this SSRF, like can we actually do more than just fucking ping our website with this? Like I'm always interested in taking part in that. And if you see any interesting behavior, you're like, I'm sure this has to be a bug, I just don't know how, just send me a message and I'll get around to it.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. I hope you have a good day. I hope you get to find some bugs, and hopefully you're staying safe out there, man.
Yeah, dude, I'm literally lined up. It's 8 o'clock in the morning. I've got 16 hours worth of hacking ahead of me today, so it's going to be a fun one.
Cool, man. Good luck. We'll talk soon.
All right, in a minute, bro.
See you, man. What an interview, man. What an interview. Went a little bit longer than I thought, but it was very, very well worth it. I didn't expect Naffy to go in so hard, and I not that he's not willing to share, but the amount of detail that he shared is what blew my mind. Seriously, thank you for being here, Naffy. This was a very cool interview. Thank you guys, everybody that was here today. Again, if you are a Twitch Prime user, Again, it doesn't hurt to, or may not hurt, it doesn't cost you any money to subscribe. You can help me keep this channel up. I appreciate it. Thank you everybody that also just subscribed. I didn't get to do any shout outs while I was interviewing, so let's go quickly through those. Let's see. He-Man, thank you for the 2 months at tier 2. Vero, thank you for just subscribing. Chancer, Nick Killer, Blackness Prime, Immortal, Byaku, Smokey. Thank you all for the support. I appreciate it. Just make sure you guys do link your Discord to your Twitch. I do have some small I have some small things that I drop in Discord just for subscribers. It's just a way for me to say thank you for supporting the channel and giving back to you guys for supporting me. Outside of that, it is going to get a little bit later for me. It's later afternoon for me. I think I'm going to host somebody else. I don't see anybody live that I could. If you guys have any suggestions that you want me to raid, let me know. Let's raid somebody, preferably somebody new that needs the viewership, so we can help somebody get started in bug bounties or in streaming or whatever that is that they're working on. Optional CTF is not a bad idea at all. We could definitely go after optional, but he has some really decent viewership already. Error 3 that we rated last week, he has a decent viewership. I'm going through Life and Science right now, or Science and Technology right now, to see who's doing hacking. Let's see. Watch hackers try to brute force a honeypot. Has 2 viewers though. That's a cool idea, but I'm not gonna do that. It looks like optional CTF may be our only choice, playing King of the Hill. All right, chat. Who should we do? Arrow or Arrow 3 or optional CTF? Which one would you guys would rather see? Optional? Got it. All right. Let's rate optional CTF. Again, I will be back online on Tuesday around the same time as today. We're going to do more stuff. Thank you to everybody that just subscribed. I appreciate everybody for being here. New followers, everybody, thank you so much. I will talk to you guys all on Tuesday. If you don't already have me on Twitter, make sure you follow me on Twitter for latest updates. Come talk to me on Discord, and let's hack some stuff. I'm done for the day. I appreciate it all. I'm out. Peace.